Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Friday Eye. I am pleased and excited to have my good friend Chad Davis join us this week. Chad and I have known each other for more years than we'd like to admit. Um, Probably Chad more than me, but he's an absolute legend in our community,
Not true.
massive in the zero community, and making waves as he's now exploring. And not even you're beyond exploring. You're charging your way into QuickBooks, and you know sharing insights with the community, not only at all the conferences, but also in your own community, called Automation Anywhere, or sorry, Automation Town, right?
Sure.
I
We,
butchered
we,
it.
we don't have to talk about that today, yes. But we're relaunching the AutomationTown IP from the podcast that Jason and I did, and turning it into an automation and AI community for accountants, which is really cool. So lots of announcements will come in the next week or so about that. And thanks for having me. It looks like you're in an RV. What's the story there?
I am. I'm a big fan of what you get to do, which is to travel the world with your family. Unfortunately, I don't get to travel nearly as much as you do because my kids uh, are pretty tied to their community. I got a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old, and my 15-year-old is not prepared to leave her friends to travel North America. But I do get to enjoy it in the summer. So I'm up at my home base, which is out in Highland Pines, and we were riffing about the joys of powering these little RVs. And I'm telling Chad that I'm running completely off solar right now, which is what I love about RVs is they're great for people with ADHD like myself, because there's so many things to like dive into, whether it's like working on the energy and solar to, kitting it all out with all the latest gadgets and gear. So it really is, a passion of mine. But where in the world is Chad Davis right now?
Listen, RVing is not a passion. It's like a glutton for punishment because
It
when
is.
you said like the energy piece, I
Yeah.
know what you really meant. It's like everything breaks and then you have to
Yes.
figure out how to fix it. You turn into literally like the best handyman or the worst handyman just by having it. They're
Yeah.
built it feels like they're built inside of 2 hours by 100 people just like throwing nails at wood. And then
Yeah.
you expect it to drive down the road. There's very few people that I've seen that are very happy. So yeah, I'm I'm the exact opposite of happy and like looking forward to fixing stuff. We really just wait until something breaks, and then my wife tends to fix it because she's way handier than I am.
Well, and
And
she's a certified RV inspector too, isn't she?
we did. Um, this is the AI talk you've all been waiting for, learning about
Yeah.
my wife and her RV technician course. But yeah, it's what kept us on the road. Yes, the short answer is I'm very proud of her. She fixes everything in the entire rig, and like best story ever is like we lost our hot water once, and our VTech couldn't figure it out. She's like, oh, you know what? I'll just deal with it. She did it. She talked to her friends, fixed it, ordered the parts. We had hot water in like 2 days. It was awesome. I'm just very proud of her.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm not quite at that level. I definitely need to call in the text when it comes to problems. But and yes, there's always a headache or two that you're dealing with. But it's the joys that you get for those 5 minutes when things are working perfectly and you're traveling down the road with your kids and seeing new sights and experiences. And that is worth every pound of pain that you have, whether that's ripping out your black tank, which I have done on a trip, or your hot water going down. And there is an endless list, which is great. Like, again, I say it's great for that ADHD mind because it keeps you busy, right? And if there's one thing that will never be replaced by AI, is an RV tech.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe, who knows? Yeah.
Maybe that's the theme of this. Like we all don't know what's coming. And
Yes.
did we ever think that robots would be milking cows? I don't know.
No, that's true. Yeah. And I guess the reality is we don't know what we don't know. And I think that that's, really interesting point. And I think that really should be the theme, is because, I was talking with Hitindra at our last conference, Had a really great conversation with him, which we did record and will be airing as another podcast down the road. And he phrased it, I think, beautifully when he said, artificial intelligence is a solution looking for a problem. And right now, I think that that's so apt for everyone's got this excitement and buzz around AI, and it's probably one of the most searched terms on Google right now. But everyone's trying to figure out how is it going to make a meaningful impact to their business. And I think a lot of us have yet to figure it out. I think there's a very small few people who are using it in some really meaningful ways, whereas a lot of people out there are still, you know, struggling with the basics of it, using it and exploring it because it's interesting, but really not making any meaningful strides in how it impacts the bottom line of their organizations. Now, I know, Chad, you're probably one of the few exceptions to this because you've always led the way on innovation. Um, are, have you
Flattery will
figured
get
out
you nowhere.
have you figured out a problem that AI is a great solution for yet?
Yeah, but it's like show and tell, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so is that what you want to chat about? Is like
Sure. Well, I'd love to. Yeah, just maybe if you could share with me, some of the ways that you are using AI in a meaningful, impactful way in your business. Show and tells are always fun.
so there's hundreds of examples, but I think the just whatever's fresh in your mind, I think is probably the easiest
Yeah,
to share. So we follow EOS in our company. So the
the
firm
entrepreneur
that the
operating system.
entrepreneurial opportunity synthesis, right? So my business partner Josh Swag and I started LiveCA, which is a Canadian CPA firm in early 2013. We both had our own thing in 2012, and that rise with cloud accounting was great. We timed it so well,
Hmm.
and that's what kind of helped us with luck in terms of just growing for the last 10 years. And then this AI stuff comes along more mainstream, and then you're like, oh, everybody's online. Everybody's doing remote. Well, I say everybody,
Hmm.
but a lot of people are doing online work. A lot of people are doing remote work, cloud through online tools. Everybody's sort of using a
Yeah,
version of
cloud's
them.
certainly not a differentiator anymore.
No, it's not a differentiator at all. So it's like, well, what do you want to be a differentiator on? And I'm seeing some firms go the technology route. Some firms are going, a niche route. Some people are going a business model route. Some are going a pricing route. Some are going employee engagement route. Some are mixing them all together into something that is comprehensible. And like, that's cool. Like, people are figuring out how to stand out. And
Hmm.
I think through EOS, we realized that having calmness and having dispersed responsibilities and having the right people in the right seats. I know that's an EOS term, but it really makes a big difference. And for
Hmm.
us, it completely changed the company financially, but more importantly, it told us where our lanes were. So maybe, a discussion on should AI or automation be part of, our core might have been what we thought about 5 years ago or 6 years ago. But now, like, we know who that lives with. We know sort of how that fits with the priorities of the company.
Hmm.
And I think it's representative of where a lot of customers or like, firms are, which is like, maybe I don't want to build this thing because I don't have the skills, or I don't want to hire somebody to build something, but maybe I just want to wait for the app to use it. So I'm waiting and seeing. There's nothing
Hmm.
wrong with that. Like, that's how technology adoption has come for a really long time. So during one of the last EOS meetings we had in Toronto, there was a part of the meeting where you have to set your rocks for the next
Yeah.
quarter. And you have to make them smart, and they have to be easily digestible, and those are the things that you share and that you work really hard on, and that's the guiding light for the next 3 months. We used to use an implementer, and they would help us craft a really great rock. And he was an incredible person. We eventually moved off of that and started doing it on our own after about a year and a bit, and
So
crafting the
sorry to interrupt. Was that
no.
implementer someone you brought in,
Yes,
like
yes, yes.
externally?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And they ended up, like, once they were gone, we were doing it ourselves. We realized, like, we were spending some good amount of time, maybe 2-3 hours, working through the rocks in terms of just naming them and getting them in a good state. This time around, just recently, when Sonnet was released through Claude, they're benchmarking a lot better than ChatGPT 4.0 is, or GPT-4, and for language and writing. And we're like, oh, well, let's use this. So
Mhm.
now we're crafting our rocks using all the information we have inside of our EOS system, combining all the issues, making it there, and just having a conversation. And I think one of my favorite parts about that is that it didn't take very long. The quality of the rocks is so much better. But what happened was something I didn't expect. As the other members of the leadership team were watching me prompt and move through Claude, like, oh, that's how you can change it. Oh, that's how you can converse with it. Oh, you don't
Mhm.
need a 40-line prompt to get what you need. Oh, you can talk to it with sass. Like you can do whatever you want and it actually will listen. Um, that was the powerful thing for us. So yes, you're getting through the process and you're doing EOS faster, but it's also unlocking an awareness for your team that I think is probably the most powerful thing we can do these days, is just increase the overall awareness that our team is having with this.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. But again, one quick question: when you say talking to it with SaaS, what do you mean by that? By like having it pull data off of like
Okay.
software-based applications?
No, I mean like SaaS, as in like, come on.
Oh, I'm like thinking software as a service. You mean you can be sassy with it? God, too many tech acronyms flying around. But yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the most powerful things I think is transparency, right? And being and showing people how you're playing with it and exploring it and with our own team as well. It's the same thing because I think a lot of people were interested but didn't really realize like they thought that you had to be more techy and you had to be like a prompt engineer and know how to get something meaningful out of it. And yes, the more that you can use things like risen formulas and structure your prompts, you can get better information out of it. But it's that conversational aspect of it that I think is really powerful with AI, is that you are talking with it and that you don't necessarily expect to get the right answer with the first question. It's this building iteratively on the concept and being able to now be able to bring large swaths of information like you guys have built up this repository of information based on all the EOS work that you've been doing, and now you can put that into your conversation and be able to pull from that and get better language and conversation, which helps with messaging and communication within the team, which is brilliant. But it's that aspect of just showing people how you're doing that and prompting ideas, right? Because one of the things I was doing with some of our staff is we would do again sort of quarterly reviews and we're taking all their goals and their objectives and putting that into ChatGPT and using that. And literally, what I did is I did that. So when we did the review, ChatGPT was open and we were going through it and putting in all their goals and their objectives and querying it on ways that they could achieve things that not only they could do to help achieve their objectives, but also things that we could do as an organization to help them to achieve their organization. And it became this collaboration between me and my colleagues, which is usually what the annual review is about. But now we've got this third party that we can query and pull sources of information from that in many ways is so much smarter than either me or any one of our employees, right? And it becomes incredibly powerful. And it also reminds me of the conversation from one of the other topics that you hosted at Get Connected Canada, when you were talking about data stores, right? And having all this information prepared and ready to be able to be used with AI. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things that people can do, even if they're sitting back and waiting for the apps to implement this technology, is making sure that you're gathering and collecting that data, even if you don't necessarily have a meaningful way to use that with the AI today. But the more like the power of our data is going to be, I think, one of the big differentiators for a lot of the firms is those people who are taking that information and collecting it and and having it available so that whenever they roll out whatever AI they choose to use, that they've got all this information that is proprietary that they've built up. Because I know also that that is one of the fears too, right? Is hey, can I give it my proprietary information? And there are channels where you absolutely should not, and there are some channels where it is safe to do it. And what's your take on that? And where do you guys draw the line as far as um, what information you're sharing with what artificial intelligence?
I mean, that's a super loaded question, but
Yes.
we've gone as far as saying, okay, our policy at LiveCA is that you can use the free version as long as certain settings are turned on, right? So temporary chat, not training the model, um, not putting in any PII or person identifiable information. And we've provided training, and they are aware of like what they can and can't do with that. Now, we also have said like, hey, try not to use the other LLMs with anything to do with our systems right now. Claude is great. I use Claude, but I use the paid one, so I'm more of like the tester in the group versus everybody doing it. So we have limited how our team can use these things. We have alerts set up whenever anybody connects through an OAuth 2 connection into from their Google login to any system. So
Mhm.
if they're trying to add in an extension or something, we'll know about it, or it'll be denied. Um, the I mean, it really just comes down to speed at this point, and like how you think about this. Because for us, there's so many nefarious ways that you can just open your data up. And I was talking to our finance lead yesterday about this. It's like, yes, we could connect our Google Workspace to an audit tool. We could do because it's from our insurance provider, but like, do we really want to? Like, probably not. We like really had to look at the scopes and
Mhm.
decide like, are we comfortable with this? And like the answer is no, we're not comfortable with it. So a lot of people will connect that button, but they won't look at what they're connecting to and
Yeah.
what they're giving up. I guess we have like, if people can edit anything, whether it's a calendar or a doc or a sheet or an email or anything, it's like that's got to go through some pretty big scrutiny in order to get approved. And yeah, it just there's a lot of scrutiny. So what was the original question there? Just about what we're doing?
Yeah, and like where do you draw the line as to what you would share? And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with you guys have an internal policy, which you guys share across the organization, and I think that that's a lot of people don't have that right now. And even like when to be honest, my jaw hit the floor when you were talking about it at the show. I'm like, shit, we should have that. And we came back and we started drafting our own internal policy because we realized, well, we're trying to inspire, get people interested. We haven't really set out across the organization, okay, these are the rules and these are the guidelines of what you can share. Because if you don't do that, you run the risk of people it being the wild wild west and people running wild with your data, depending upon how well you have that locked down. And the smaller the firm, the less likely that data is locked down, right, in a meaningful way.
Yeah, like there's pros and cons to all different types of like sizes and security team approaches to this. And you
Hmm.
know being in a small company, yes, it might be more wild west, and you have more fun, but you have more risk. And like then you look at
Yes.
the mid-sized firms, and they'll have everything locked down to the T. It's like, can you do your job well enough to be able to do this? And it's like, probably. I mean, no one's complaining like crazy, but at the end of the day, there might be something really great, and it just would take forever to test.
Yeah, yeah, that's and it's walking that tightrope, right, between protecting your data and having the freedom and flexibility to try and explore new things. And I think that there is a way to walk that tightrope, right? Like it's
Okay, so,
it's
so good example on that one. Early days, there was a bunch of extensions for Google Sheets that came out that allowed you to put your API key in for OpenAI,
Mhm.
and then you could start running formulas and doing queries and doing all that kind of work. But then all the data kind of went through their servers. Like they could see all
Mhm.
your stuff too. And I wasn't comfortable with that. So you think I knew how to do like make an extension inside of Google Apps Script before this? Like, no. I didn't even like I knew the extension thing was there and then the code looked super
But
scary.
you
But
were able
then
to figure it out with AI, I bet you.
with AI and like a few weeks of just learning and figuring out what environments were and how deployments worked and how cloud, you know, server side processing worked. Like these are all things that I didn't really have any experience with, but through just asking questions like an idiot, I was able to get answers that were like my
Close enough to write.
close enough to figure it out. And
Yeah.
then I duplicated it and built my own extension so that now whenever you type in like equals AI open bracket, you put the source of the cell and then your query in brackets after the comma, and boom, you have whatever you want with your own private connection, and you don't have to worry about these external things. And that's why there is this debate right now about build versus buy. Like
Yeah.
we're all kind of operating on our own assumptions of how technology gets implemented, but like the real answer is like no one freaking knows. We could think about software in a completely different way in a year. It could be all voice activated and we're not thinking about where we're doing data stores. Like data
Mhm.
stores is like a very old way of thinking. I think it's like, oh, put it in this format, put it in this thing. I mean, there could be a world where somebody flicks a switch one day and all of the stuff is now part of context no matter where
Yeah.
it is, and you're good to go.
I
So
believe that will happen. I think I'm pretty confident that that's part of our future. Is that,
look
and
at the
which is why
Microsoft
I'm,
computers, right?
yeah,
The new recall stuff.
yeah, which has its own concerns, but
Of
um,
course it does. You know, today was if we're watching this back. Today was the big day for Microsoft, right?
yeah,
Nothing happened out of the ordinary.
nothing at all, right? There wasn't any outages, so
Every airport didn't go down today. Nope.
yeah, no, nothing wrong there.
Hmm.
Um, and that becomes the scary thing too when you're waiting on the app providers to build it. One, you don't know. You, for many of us, it's a black box as to what's happening with this data when it goes in there.
Hmm.
Very few people are reading the terms of services and actually understanding what's going on. Although, again, now thanks to AI, at least you can take those terms of services and ask it to translate it into English instead of legalese, so you
Dude,
can actually understand what's going on with your data.
I know we're all over the place here, but this is
Yeah,
the key. It's like I for the first time read a terms of service update from Dex today. They sent it out and like, hey, we're writing to let you know we made some changes. How many of those have you gotten in your life?
most of them that I ignore, or
Right.
100% of them that
And
I
most
ignore.
people do. So
Yeah,
what Dex did differently is they broke out they obviously used AI and then
yeah,
somebody reviewed it and they broke out all the sections that changed and what changed and made it accessible. So, for
and
example, they wrote, "Hey, we updated our list of sub-processors to include suppliers that our use of their service requires us to share some of our customer information with them. The updated list of processors is found in this link." You click on it, you can see the processors. You're like, holy crap, they share our data with a bunch of people. Okay, I wonder. Like
mhm,
now I'm more aware. But this stuff would go under the rug for
yeah,
the average user. But now you're like, oh, the transparency is now alive, and it's like
yeah,
it was actually a pleasure to read this update because like I feel smarter. It's like when
yeah,
Float released all their new terms of service of Float credit card processing company or
yeah,
Canada reimbursements, virtual cards. They had a whole bunch of terms of services. I copied the whole thing, threw it in there, read it, saw the thing. I'm like, holy cow. Okay, that's what they're doing with all this stuff. I'm not super scared, but now I understand it. And it's like
yeah,
hard to find this information somewhere else. So I love how the accessibility to understanding something, whether it's a extension in Google Sheets that you no longer have to use to understanding terms of service, that awareness is like what I'm kind of advocating for at our firm.
yeah. And that's, I think, to be honest, that's the big solution, or that's the big problem that I think AI solves, is curiosity, right? It allows anyone and everyone to explore anything that they're curious about, and learn and explore and get knowledge about things that, yes, there would have been ways to go and educate yourself, whether that was going through YouTube videos and reading books or whatever the case might be, or traditional education, but it amps up that level and allows you to go down rabbit holes, and explore anything that you're curious about, whether that's solar powered RVs, or how to fix your hot water heater, or whether that's understanding terms of service. It allows us to explore our curiosity and expand our knowledge base in ways that we never have been able to do in the past, which is just amping up the power of those people who are curious.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about next?
Um, so, what about your thoughts on how AI is changing automation? We did a big session on RPA and automation at Get Connected, um, and well, both of what we explored, we did integrate with AI in our automations by leveraging that. But what do you think? Do you believe that AI will change the way that we do automations in the future? Which again is a totally loaded question and biased question, because I think it will. And maybe more importantly, how do you think it will change the way we build out automations?
To the same point as before, it's making everything accessible. So
Hmm.
before, Zapier didn't have a button that just said freeform text what you want to build, and then it builds it out for you.
Yeah,
Now it does. So
sort of.
to a point, it gives the
It
average
gives you an
person
outline.
a starting point where they
Yeah.
can be like, "Oh, I didn't know the filtering option existed. Oh, I didn't know I needed to change a date into this format. Oh, I didn't know I needed to use regex in a code to get something out to move it over here, but this might give you an idea of how to use it." So I think that awareness and like the starting point will enable more people to play around with automation. And I should
Hmm.
just say very clearly, like, I believe AI is great and fun, but there tends to be
And over AI
no. I can see more benefits for our firm with automation
than AI.
than like whatever we're calling AI, right? Which is
Hmm.
like I want the repeatable things that happen all the time to follow a process and to ingest data and to spit it out. And if you need to sprinkle AI in there for some reason, cool, do it.
Hmm.
Um, that's what's enhancing the automation piece. Same with RPA, right? Like in the olden days, RPA was click here, and if it was off by 2 pixels, it broke,
Yeah.
or they changed the name and it broke. Now that's changing because there might be three different things that you could say, which is like, click on this named uh, element, or the button class this, or things that are labeled with this word, and find it, versus it's here at these XY coordinates. And that's what's cool, is like
Yeah.
now we're like, every technology, whether it's RPA or automation or email, like even today with Superhuman's new V2 or whatever it came out, like just everything is getting enhanced. And the speed of developing is because the developers are using it too, and they're moving
Yeah.
faster. It's awesome. Like, I just feel like we're in a good spot right now.
Absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right. I think it's the way you sprinkle it in, and I think from designing automations, it's enabling more people to be able to get their foot in the door and explore. And then, you know, if you go to Zapier and you put in your thing, it's going to build your outline. But now, if you don't know how to connect certain applications, because it's basically building you your framework, and then you have to go in and you have to connect, you have to fill in each automation step and connect it to whatever it's trying to run, whether that's Excel sheets or whatever. But now, even if you don't know how to do that, you can look up that information and you can
Okay,
grow.
okay. So here's a good example. Fathom Analytics is like the low. It's the opposite of Google Analytics, right? It's just like
Mhm.
super. I won't say basic, but it runs. It gives you everything you need. It's lightweight. That's what I was trying to say. So we use that instead of Google Analytics on our website, and there wasn't an easy way to get all of our stats into Slack, but they have an API. Now their
Yeah,
API, I mean, it's great, but it's very technical. And using Zapier or Make, I needed to be able to pull out certain information. So I won't go too long on here, but I'm going to pull this one out just so we can see it. I needed to run. Here we go. Developer. Here we go. I needed to run an update every day so I could see how the website was going. So I ran it through make.com, and they have this module called HTTP, which lets you connect
yeah,
to any API essentially. So we connected it here, but I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of like scopes, which is like how detailed information you get back, whether it's you can write it or read it or do something like that. Um, I needed to figure out like the month to date numbers, the the last week, the same day last week kind of stuff. I needed to find out like page counts for how much cumulatively month to date versus last month did that page get, and specific pages. How do I do it? All I ended up doing was taking screenshots from Make, threw it into GPT 4.0, I think it was that we used for this one, and then literally I didn't even put the link. I just copied and pasted the entire schema and API docs because it fit, and asked it to like help me fill in these
yeah,
things. It worked the first time,
yeah.
and I would have. This was
Struggled for hours.
2 years ago. It would have hired somebody off of Upwork, be like,
Yeah.
help me out. Like here's $200 to do this, and now that's not necessary.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that that's the it's so powerful right now when you can, and then you have that knowledge now going forward, right? And then you can build and grow and continue doing that. And so even with RPA, there's actually even a Power Automate desktop GPT that we use when we're like, hey, how do you do this in RPA? Because we're still exploring and trying to figure out. And there's so many actions that I don't even know. You like all there's so much power into what we can do with RPA that we're just glimpsing on the surface of. And we'll go to AI to ask it questions on how do we do that. And so far, it's been like you, like it's 100% success rate. We have had some situations where it gives us a way to do it that isn't maybe necessarily the cleanest and most elegant way. And but with refining and iteratively having that conversation, it usually does give you the other ways to do it. If you can be like, well, what if I did this instead, right? And it's amazing to like have basically an expert on whatever topic or subject that you want at your fingertips to guide you through how to do things, which is enabling people to do more on their own, which again then is upping the ability for people to build their own applications. And as they become more aware of the terms of services of many of the applications that they're using, the more that they're going to be inclined to want to build out those things for themselves. Um, and it'll be interesting because I guess that'll make uh, this a world where we're full of a whole bunch of proprietary based applications that really run that really solve unique problems to that individual firm. And I think that it's so interesting to me too the way that you guys have gone down such a big road on automation and AI. Yet you deliver a very, very bespoke and very personalized service that has no robotic feel to it. And so I guess that's another question I have is like, so you're leveraging all this automation, how do you make sure that the clients still feel that bespoke personalized service, um, and that it isn't a robotic automated process behind the scenes?
Hmm. I think our clients want it to be robotic behind the scenes.
Do they?
Yeah, I mean, literally, all we're selling is a full finance team for less than the price of a full time hire. That finance team should deliver financial statements. It should be paying people on time. It should do the payroll right. It should do the taxes properly. It should have some advice along the way, and it should just work.
I agree with that, but I cannot believe for a second that your service is only about getting the numbers right.
We've created room for our team to have conversations with clients that want conversations using tech. But I would argue that it's the business processes that have been prioritized because of the level of how much they impact the team. And like trust me, EOS is the reason why we're doing the right things at the right time. And we had really rough time a couple years ago when we were kind of going through this. Without EOS, I don't know if we would have prioritized the right things.
Mm-hmm.
And now we are. So I think one of the things we learned is that in order for a company to not feel stressed all the time is that you have to create room. So one of the lessons we learned is of the 160 hours that every person works per month roughly, chargeable time, like chargeable hours onto client work, whether it's value pricing, subscription, not tracking time, whatever,
Right.
it probably shouldn't be more than 110 hours, 115, 120 of the 160. And some should be no more than 80. And if you look at that business model, like it doesn't make sense from a
Yeah.
traditional accounting perspective. But for
I remember
us,
my dad's firm back in the day, you weren't allowed more than 10% non-chargeable.
right, like it's crazy because
Yeah.
I don't, maybe you're, I know your dad, but like maybe that the focus wasn't on the model and the calmness. It was on getting the work done in a ratio that made sense financially so that he could take what he needed and everybody
Yeah.
else worked around it.
Yeah.
So here we're doing the opposite. We're saying, how can we create enough time so that people can have their oodles of vacation and all the stat holidays and sick days and
Mm-hmm.
time off for training and for supporting one another and for coverage. And like that's where the math landed. So it's funny how like if you have a tech appreciation and you have the right sort of people in the company who are curious and who are guiding that, you you get into a thing where it's not all about the tech. Like it's about your pricing, it's about your business model, it's about the right people in the right seats, it's about what you're prioritizing. And like I think when people have an awareness of the technology, that's just as powerful as being an expert in it because they can ask the right questions and
Yeah.
they can spend less time doing stupid stuff.
Yeah. And sometimes the best questions come from the people who don't know, right?
Maybe agree to disagree. I don't know. Maybe people without that awareness don't know. Like I didn't know what a webhook was like 4 years ago, 5 years
Right.
ago. No idea. Like, and that's the language that the internet moves on between
Yeah.
software applications.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh crap, if I didn't know that, what else do I don't know? And like the answer is a hell of a lot. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we create a base level of understanding for every accountant out there to be able to ask better questions?
Yes.
That's the whole reason I wanted to start the AutomationTown community, is because the goal is to network with other accountants. The goal is it for not to be just firm owners that are there. It's for the staff members or the team members. It's for the ops people. It's for the students in university who want to learn what technology is out there so they can ask better questions. Like, what's a data? Why aren't we using a database for this? Why aren't we using an automation? I don't know how to build the automation, but why aren't we doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, why is somebody rekeying something off of an email? There's tools to do this. So as long as we can provide awareness on a consistent basis with lots of examples, I feel like we can raise the collective technology awareness of the average accountant.
Right. And then also, I mean, the other thing that you need the opportunity to have the time to explore the things you're learning about, which you guys are doing by enabling that somewhere between 50 to 25% non-chargeable time. And like you said, you worked backwards from knowing and understanding what people do. So how did you work backwards from figuring out what should be, and or maybe you can help me understand what you go through because it might be custom to each individual on your team. How do you figure out what the ratio of chargeable to non-chargeable time should be so that those people have the freedom and opportunity to explore all this new tech?
How we did it was to step away from how we did it for the first 10 years of the company, which was leadership figures it out. We went to the team. We put the entire rock onto, one person on the leadership team that wasn't me or Josh, and they they conducted so many interviews to understand how people spend time on their jobs, how managers would like their departments to be staffed. And then we took that information, ran it through our models, and then found out that, yeah, this could work. In fact, there's a margin of error, and we can live within that margin of error and still be profitable and give people raises and take on great clients and, provide good service. So if it wasn't for really listening to literally every single person about how they want to work, then we wouldn't have gotten there. So to your dad's point of saying 90% or more, we're like, I don't know, it could be 90%, it could be 4%. Let's figure it out together. And that was the power.
And do you do that on a per individual basis, or is it by department? Is it
Yeah, I don't mind sharing that. So like right now we have we have three different levels for every position at the firm, so that people have a career path. They know exactly what they're getting into. They know where the max are, the pay bands for each,
right?
absolute. There's a whole controversy of like, should you have pay bands or not? I know that's there, but we do. We do it for clarity for now because we didn't have it before.
Right.
And at the end of the day, every position, and so say it's accounts payable, there's the three levels. Each one of those levels will have what the, call it chargeable, but client work number is. And if a person is different because maybe they're going on mat leave in 2 months and they've asked for part time or something, or they're just starting and they won't have the same amount of stuff. Having all this integrated into a capacity planning model per person by role, almost like a hierarchy, gives you all of your available inventory that you have in order to sell to new customers or to increase services from existing customers. And we operated for over a decade without that.
Right.
Now that we have it, if you know a team member X needs to go to part-time for some reason, okay, now that 90 or that 100% of their position is now at 60% of their position, but it's still their position, it still had a base, it's just adjusted for that one person, and then you
Right.
move on.
Really interesting. And I assume that and it's dangerous when you assume that the chargeable, or whatever you want to call it, let's call it chargeable hours for just make it simple. The number of chargeable hours goes up with as the pay bands go up, or does it stay the same, or does it go down?
I think on average it goes down
Really?
because
So you expect them, as the longer they're with you, the more that they actually have to spend time learning and exploring.
I'd use a different word, I'd use support, right? The longer they're with you, the more knowledge they have and the more they can support on memos, documentation, figuring
Right.
out where the gaps are in your knowledge bases, listening to new employees who come on board who have questions. You're like, wait a minute, that's really clear in these two documents. Why didn't they know that? You're like, oh, because we didn't make it super accessible. We only mentioned it in two places, but we never followed up at the end of the first or second week to say, remember to look in these places first. And like we right now don't have an organization wide chatbot on our stuff, but a few people have access to it, and it's not used that much. So it's
Hmm.
like, following human psychology, it's like, okay, that's fine, doesn't mean we're not going to keep building it, but there's a huge opportunity. It's just the buy versus build conversation is a real one, and there's
Yeah.
just so much change happening every freaking day. Just yesterday, GPT-4o mini was released on the API. Super cheap, right? Like almost every chatbot that you see on a website will probably use this now versus 3.5 turbo.
Right.
And it's just like, okay, cool, a new model, new companies come out. It's like, I don't want to put a bunch of money into building it like we did with our other stuff we did earlier on, um, because the juice isn't worth the squeeze right now.
Yeah.
I think the awareness pieces.
Yeah. and I think that that's the thing a lot of people are worried about, is like that it's changing so rapidly that they're afraid to expend large amounts of time building anything for themselves because it's changing almost on a daily basis, right? Um, I I'm obviously veering from that perspective because we're still building out stuff even on a daily, even though things change on a daily. How much of that are you guys doing? Have you guys built any GPTs yet for yourselves? Are you
Mhm.
building? Yeah, and because I find that really helpful, right? Like I like basically any time that I have any aspect where I feel like I want to narrow in on, like almost niching for your apps. That's when I'm building out a GPT for it. And I think that there's a lot of people who are, again, reliant on either existing GPTs or existing apps having that. And I don't know if that's because they don't realize how easy it is to build the GPTs. What do you think is preventing people from, you know, going down this path of building out their own GPTs or building out their own Google Sheets applications, or building their own application, whatever it is across the board? What's holding them back from that? Is it the lack of knowledge? Is it the fear that it's changing?
I don't know.
You know, because yeah, I guess the problem is it's not holding either of us back.
No,
Um,
here's the thing. I think that everybody moves at their own pace, and like technology is not the answer to everything. In fact, I'd argue it's probably a hindrance to a lot of things. So where we might get excited about it, I think I've aged a little bit in the last few years in terms of what I think we should be spending our time on. Like I'm so happy that we spend 95% of our time on the business model and taking care of the team and 5% on technology versus early days when it was like 60% technology, 40% people because you like the technology was the draw.
yeah,
Now I fundamentally believe calmness is the draw for the types of people that want to be around our firm. It's like I can stand here very clearly today and say, we don't want to be bigger. We don't want to be smaller. We want to be this size because this model works for us for now until new information comes, and then we can make a decision at that point.
so stability, calmness, and balance sounds like are the
Yeah.
keys.
And then when you piece in the tech, like it should align with what you're building. So you're building your GPTs because you don't want your team members to like waste time on stuff. You want to give them an opportunity to do more
Mhm.
with one thing. You have so like you've always impressed me with the way that you build bots to go do a bunch of work, especially around T2s and validations and checking balances and things like awesome. I don't know very many people doing that at all.
Yeah.
And that was something really cool that you shared at the Get Connected conference in Vancouver and in Toronto.
Well,
But
we've got some new stuff that's even cooler. We were literally just playing with Kasim on computer vision. So
mhm,
and again, came from a problem that we had to solve. So we were automating sending files for signature, right? Like just through, we use Lisio and Adobe, and there's templates, and so we were automating sending out the files for signature. But what we discovered was that our own signature wasn't always on the file, because there's basically like the process that you have to go through to make sure that the right template was used, and then that puts the signature on the file. And it wasn't putting it on every single file. So when we automated it, we were sending files to get signed by our clients that weren't signed by us. So we just wrote something this morning with Kasim that can open a PDF and look for a signature on that document and tell me if that signature is there using computer vision. Which, like, I never thought in a million years I would know how to do anything with computer vision. And it was, you know how we did it? Again, by just opening up the software, going to Chat GPT's thing and saying, if I have a PDF and I want to find an image on it, how would I do it? And it literally gave me the steps on how to do it. And we were able to build something out this morning. We had to play around with a couple of different ways to be able to do it. The first way we tried didn't work, as Kasim was saying, it could be frustrating. And that first path that didn't work was frustrating.
yeah.
But by the second path, we had it figured out, and we were told about the issue on Monday. So we went out, we showed everyone, okay, hey, here's the thing, we want to roll it out. What does everyone think? And someone said, well, by the way, um, I have to manually check that the file has a signature before, because some of them are coming through with a signature. And we're like, well, let's solve that. And now we're using computer vision as part of our process. And which I think where I am is, well, I'm geeking out on this stuff. I think I'm still a couple years behind you guys in that I'm still putting too much emphasis on the technology. I definitely value my team, and we do a lot of work to try and build and grow that team. But the more I have conversations, the more I realize there's so many opportunities for things that we can and should be doing. Whether it be around I obviously I said my dad started with 10% non-chargeable time. I threw that baby out with the bathwater years ago because I realized no, we need to be spending a lot more time. But I don't really put that into our personalized plan for each individual as to where that number should be. I've just basically been letting it run free flow, and just when we encounter issues with productivity, having conversations with individuals who aren't hitting that mark. But I'm really realizing how important it is to have that plan, and I love that idea of having that uh, that growth plan for the employees with the different levels, and helping them transition, and thinking through what those levels should be and how that should change. And you really inspired me with what you're saying too, is about how I naively was thinking, oh, as people get more experience with your firm and your organization, they need less training and less education, so they should be more chargeable. But you're absolutely right. It's the opposite. Now they have so much information and knowledge that we need them spending that, sharing that with the other people in the organization, and disseminating that knowledge and that wealth of information. Um,
Yeah, and I can't take any credit for this. This is the power of having like a tuned in integrator in EOS. Forgive me for just being so pro EOS, but it has changed our company 100% for the better. Um, a really tuned in integrator. So my business partner Josh, he's the one that's ultimately running the the leadership team's priorities and meetings in conjunction with a really talented HR professional who's sitting at the leadership team, and with really engaged other leadership team members that are advocating for their team members, advocating for peace, advocating for calmness, but also structure, opportunities, priorities. Like they're doing the right things. So I think one of the, I won't say it's a mistake, because you do what you do whenever you're growing, but you know switching to that really professional approach, like that really helped us on the HR side. It really just changed our entire like ethos on how not ethos, just it just changed our approach to how we communicate what's important and listen to people. Like it just worked out way better. So highly recommend getting HR professionals. And to be honest,
yeah.
we ended up hiring Castle HR out of Ontario.
Oh yeah, I know Castle H. We looked at them. They have some interesting tools.
Not just tools, but they have just a broad range of experiences, and they can go in and like be the service provider for you. And like they actually helped us source and hire our HR professional as we were transitioning. Right. So it worked out fantastic. Like Tom and everybody at Castle HR is just like, I wish, because they've worked with a few accounting firms now, they've got a good insight into like HR and remote work and how that works with business models and accounting. Yeah, there's no kickbacks or anything here, but they just really helped us out.
Cool. I'll definitely have a look at them. Now, I have another more self-serving question, because I've read EOS, and we've implemented some EOS concept. I love the whole idea of rocks, pebbles, and sand and water, and that whole concept. It really hits home with me. How did you guys actually like? Because it sounds like you have a much more like you're beyond just reading the book. Did you engage with a contractor to get you guys started with EOS? Like, how did your journey with EOS start? Um, was
I
or did
feel,
you just
no, I feel like
literally just start implementing the principles?
it got really popular on Twitter and LinkedIn in like 2020, 2021. It's been around for a
Yeah,
long time,
yeah.
but it got really popular. So a lot of companies were starting to talk about it. Josh and I had heard about it from our friends, and we had done our own independent research. And like within weeks of each other, we're just like, hey, is this something? Is this something we should look at? And it was yes. Then we decided to go with an implementer. We interviewed 3 implementers, all in Ontario, and one. His name was Andrew. He was incredible and must be a name
As
thing.
all Andrews are.
Yeah, yeah. And he had his own business before, right? Knew our size, knew the struggles we were going through. We worked with him for a year, and at the time, like these rates are all public. It was like $6,000 a day that we were spending with him 4 times a year, and it worked. Like it really helped us. Like the amount of times we've changed our accountability chart and changed our outlook, and what is right person, right seat type of conversations. Like he taught us how to use EOS. And then like every single person that goes through it, there's branches that you cling on to and ones that you're like, I'll never use this. And we're the same. There's probably like
Mm,
15 different modules we don't use. But you know what we do use? We use the level 10 meetings, the rocks, the vision traction organizer, the 1 year plans, the 3 year plans. We use the accountability chart. We use just all of the things that help us identify our short term and our long term issues, helps us prioritize them in a nice place. And we use a software called 90.io, which is one of the more popular ones to use with EOS. So every single meeting is documented, it's recorded, it's summarized. It is, it cascades messages to other departments. We're in tune right now with each other's like departments and how things are running. And we stopped using the integrator because we got as far as we needed to go. And we wanted to put our own spin on it for a while. And so far, I love it. Like we just keep making changes every quarter, and now we're into our own groove. And that's what I hope for everybody. You don't need EOS, you just need a framework. And I feel
yeah,
like a lot of people lack a framework that they trust.
yeah. Our framework was ISO 9000. That's what I had sort of inherited from my dad, which had so many great pieces. But I'm definitely feeling the desire to make a shift off of ISO, which is much more around manufacturing than it is around um, and it's all around the process and not really around the team. And I'm definitely feeling that need to make a shift right now for ourselves. So I got to figure that out, and I think EOS might be the right tool for me. So thank you for the introduction. But on that note, we're pretty much at time, and I know that you've got a busy schedule. So any last parting words that you wanted to say, or and how do people get a hold of you? Obviously not for meetings, but like you've got a lot of content with Automation Town. What's the best way for them to, if they're not already following you and connecting with you and getting your pearls of wisdom from that? What's the best way for them to do
There's no wisdom.
it?
It I'll be announcing all the community stuff on Twitter and LinkedIn. So, Chad Davis on LinkedIn, it's me, beard. There's a big RV on the photo. And then on Twitter, it's just at Chad Davis. And that's where I post a lot of stuff. Over the next week, there'll be a whole bunch of things. But I think what's most exciting is like this community is not about me, it's about everybody that's going to be contributing. And right now, we
Mhm.
have 7 or 8 of like our industry's most popular and helpful automation people. And like that's the launch event. It's like a 7 or 8 week event where you've got, Isaac from Obser, Kyle from RLB, Wesley from Automatica, Olivia Look, who's been doing a bunch of Zapier stuff. You've got Ashley Francis doing stuff with Power Automate, Corey from Streams, and a bunch of other people. And that's what I kind of love about this is like everybody's going to be able to contribute to like that overall awareness level that every
Right.
account can do. And if it's cheap enough, which I hope it is, and it stays cheap, like the more people can benefit from it. And I'm not trying to make this a thing where you're paying a couple $100 a month and like limiting the amount of people. There's great communities for that already.
Mhm.
This is meant for that. So Twitter and LinkedIn would be great, and it'd be kind of cool to connect with people I haven't met before.
Cool. Well, thank you again for joining us, and can't wait for Automation Town's community to pop up.
Thanks.
I'll be in there for